there are implications for a language when it becomes a global language. And some of these implications are actually not all positive. So the positive ones, obviously, is that the language is extremely vigorous, it's creative, there's a lot of change happening to it, and it's always current and cutting edge. So it's a very vibrant language simply because there's so many people speaking it, and it's being used in so many different situations. And this is where English really is at. It's a wonderful, interesting, creative, vibrant language. On the other hand, some interesting things happen when so many people are speaking a language because there are so many forces of change acting on that language. So here are some interesting implications for both native and non-native speakers of English. The first implication is that when a language becomes a global language, there are actually more second, third, and fourth speakers of the language than there are native speakers of the language. And that's the situation we currently have today. There are more people who have learned English on top of their first language than have learned English as their first language. And so this brings up an issue of who controls the language. So who decides what the standard for the language is? So is it the native speakers because, hey, they learned it as their first language and therefore it's their language? Or is it the second, third, and fourth speakers of the language who have learned it and now have decided to use it maybe in slightly different ways? So the idea of ownership of a global language really becomes quite interesting. Is it owned by the native speakers of the language, and are they the ones who set the standard? Or is it owned by all the other speakers of the language, and are they the ones that set the standard? Another interesting implication for English as a global language is the possibility that because there's so many different speakers of English, and each group of speakers is using English in a slightly different or unique way, and there's different forces acting on the language in different regions of the world, we get the possibility that we'll create many different dialects of English, and over time, these dialects may actually become mutually incomprehensible. And we saw this with Latin, so Latin's a really good example of this process at work. So Latin started out as one language, but then it spread, and then over time, in each region where it was used, it developed into a distinct language, and these languages became mutually incomprehensible. So there is the possibility that this will happen with English. So there's some really interesting discussion around what is the future of the English language now that it has become officially a global language.